صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وعلى روحك وبدنك الطاهرة صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين السلام عليكم جميعا يا شهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تهنوا ولا تحزنوا وأنتم الأعلون إن كنتم مؤمنين. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Is Islam an Arabi-centric religion or no? Is a very thought-provoking question on the minds of both millions and non-millions, particularly those from a non-Middle Eastern background today, in the idea that it seems to be very advantageous to be both Muslim and Arabi with regards to the scope of religiosity and Iman within Islam. Of course, no Muslim could accept this. Every Muslim will vehemently reject such a statement, in that there seems to be some favoritism regarding nationalities, that the Arab has a higher lofty status in the eyes of Allah. Definitely this is rejected. God Himself made it very clear, crystal clear, that the best amongst you is the one who is most God conscious, not the Arab, not the Ajam, not the so on and so forth. However, in light of the various identity social movements that have emerged, whether they are the very vile white supremacist or any supremacist movement, or movements motivated by social justice and reform to bring about change in society, say maybe the Black Lives Matter movements or the various women movements, or movements motivated by change on a global scale to bring about more justice to other groups that have not been receiving justice, the Uyghur Muslims, our Palestinian brothers and sisters, and so on and so forth. The idea of identity is of utmost significance in every single human being's life, irrespective of religiosity, faith. It does not even matter. Ultimately, from the outset, however, one cannot but beg to ask the question. All of these Arabi Muslims seem to be having the larger end of the stick when it comes to religiosity. Why is that? Because when we observe God's final message, for example, God's final revelation, it was revealed in what? The Holy Quran in Arabic. God's greatest prophet, and moreover, greatest of all creation, Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from the Arabian Peninsula. And if you've accepted the wilayah of the Ahlul Bayt and the successorship of the Holy Prophet of Islam, the Imams alayhim salatu wasalam, you will find that they begin with a man whose very title is what? Sayyidul Arabi wal Ajam. That Amir al-Mu'minin is the master of the Arab. Therefore, one cannot but beg to ask, especially our brothers and sisters across the world who are not from a Middle Eastern background, or our brothers and sisters who converted, reverted to Islam. Looking outside in, it seems to be very good to be someone who at least has a strong command in the Arabic language by default of being from the Arabian Peninsula, maybe even being from the same family of the Holy Prophet of Islam, Sadat, Sayyidat, someone who is a Sayyid from the line of the Holy Prophet of Islam. It cannot help but ask, is that better? Can you be a bit more ahead with regards to your religiosity by default of where you're from? The obvious answer is no, absolutely not. But as mentioned, in light of these social movements, what is the proper response to some of these questions posed earlier? First of all, when we examine the overwhelming majority of Muslims, the largest Muslim population on the planet is not from a Middle Eastern country. It's from where? From an Asian country, South Asian, Indonesia. Our Indonesian brothers and sisters are not Middle Easterners. However, you find they have the largest numbers, over 100 million followers and lovers of Allah, the Quran, the Holy Prophet, the Ahlul Bayt, alayhimus salatu wassalam. Therefore, numbers will dictate to you. Then next you'll have perhaps you might have the Indian, Pakistani subcontinent, over 100 million Muslims. Then you have Bangladesh, over 70 million Muslims, or even more than that. And then you'll have Egypt next in line with regards to the largest population of Muslims. So if we're counting demographics, then the Arab nations are not even within the first top 3. That is from a population point of view. However, when it comes to the fact of the matter, the answer is no. But the reality seems to be quite different unless we begin to address some of these pinnacle and quintessential points, dare I say. Beginning with, why does the Holy Quran have to be in the Arabic language? Why Arabic? Surely, if it's the last and final message to humanity, it would be in a language that what all of humanity would be able to understand and comprehend. But it's only written in and read in the Arabic language. Does that give Arabic an advantage, a step ahead? Not necessarily. First of all, the Holy Quran responds to this in Surah Yusuf, ayah number 2. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. We have brought down to you a holy Quran in the Arabic language so that you will understand and so that you might know and be of those who are aqilun. When you say aqil, you refer to someone who is well-mannered and well-rationalized and understanding, has a strong level of intellect, and aqil. The Quran has been brought down in the Arabic language so we can have that. So are you saying if we do not know how to read the Arabic Quran, we cannot be of those who are uqal, those who attain some of this wisdom? No, not necessarily. Of course, how many stories have we heard of non-Muslims being inspired from the English translation of the Holy Quran? Or even Muslims. There's nothing wrong opening an English translation, as in many of us, our first language is probably English, then Arabic. As good as your Arabic may be, English was probably your first language. It doesn't hurt to open the English Quran. But you will not be able to appreciate the abundance and plethora of beauty that the Quran has to offer, being an intellectual linguistic miracle, if you don't read it in Arabic. And I can provide a few examples. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give you phonetic miracles, can give you subtle miracles, can give you miracles that will only be appreciated grammatically. For example, the ayah in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Sanulqi alayka qawlan thaqila. In the Arabic language, there are heavy letters and light letters. You don't have this in English. A heavy letter would be harf qaf. Qaf is a heavy letter, comes from the back of the throat, so it takes more effort to pronounce. Qaf is considered heavy letter as opposed to, let's say, lam or alif, easy on the lips. Qaf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses in repetition as well as multiple heavy sounding letters when He refers to a command or a reminder that revolves around burdensome heaviness, significance. Sanulqi, we will enthrust upon you using heavy letters. Qawlan, another heavy letter, which refers to a speech, a worthy, strong piece of advice or news. Thaqila, heavy at the same time. This you cannot appreciate unless you read it in the Arabic. Or for example, in Surah An-Nas, if you recite Surah An-Nas in Arabic, you will realize a synchronization phonetically with the pronunciation of the words. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ مِنْ شَرِّ الْوَسْوَاسِ الْخَنَّاسِ الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي صُدُورِ النَّاسِ من الجنة والناس. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Another title for the surah is the whispers of shaitan. And it is meant to be recited solemnly, quietly, and relaxing. There are various qira'at of the Holy Quran, various readings of the Quran. Not different versions, qira'at, readings. When you read the ahkam of tajweed, you will find, and rulings of tajweed, that in Surah An-Nas it is meant to be recited, this chapter, the chapter of the people, in a very calm and soothing way. Reflecting, representing, and even in parallel with the context of what it is mentioning, how shaitan comes and whispers to you. And you can hear the S's in between each and every sentence. How can you appreciate this unless you read it in the Arabic language, of course? Therefore, you are allowed to read the Quran in English. You will still get the benefits and the ajr, but not to the level of understanding and appreciation that you will find had you read it in, let's say, the Arabic language. Another reason, brothers and sisters, is that there are many wrong translations of the Holy Quran. And it's high time this is addressed, definitely. Because amongst the most popular, just to think of one or two, the Yusuf Ali translation. I'm sure many of us have heard of the Yusuf Ali translation of the Holy Quran. Yusuf Ali, I would not recommend this translation. With all due respect to the work and the effort put through by this man, this academic, he didn't know Arabic, could not read or write Arabic, and translated an Arabic book that its foundation revolves around the grammar and essence and knowledge and everything that it has to offer. So you will have translations, for example, in Surah Al-Ma'idah chapter 5 verse 51, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, la tattakhidhu al-Yahuda wal-Nasara awliya'a ba'dhum awliya'u ba'd. O you who believe, do not take the Jews and Christians, English translation, as friends. Awliya does not mean friends. In the ambiguous nature of awliya, it can mean, but in this context it doesn't. Otherwise that will contradict the same Quran that says you will find the closest amongst you in love and mawadda are Christians. So how can here not be friends, but they are the closest? English translation doesn't do justice. And in many cases, it mistranslates and misinterprets what's being said. There's nothing wrong with reading that translation. Always remember, however, keep in the back of your mind that this is a person's fallible attempt to translate what could be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's meaning in these words here, which are infallible. And so when you have the fallible translating or mingling with when you have the fallible mingling and translating the infallible, that's where you find a few discrepancies and issues emerging, which is a matter that is not surprising, of course. Even tafasir from those who have the strongest command in Arabic, Quranic exegesis, will not be able to bring about the true beauty and essence of each and every single word. As in, you recall Amir al-Mu'mineen doing tafsir of the Holy Quran, but not beginning with a chapter, or not starting with, the first 10 ayat. He began with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Imam Ali alayhi salam, on the member of Kufa, beginning the Quranic exegesis. He began with Bismillah. He started with the first letter, Ba. He began, some ahadith describe him beginning early in the morning at Fajr. He finished at Maghrib when the sun was setting, and he was still on the Ba. He hadn't finished. In many of our works of tafasir, 2 pages later, you're done with 5 chapters, 5 ayat, let's say 5 whatever, you're over with this. What mystical wonders and philosophy and beauty could you offer from the Ba that it takes a whole bloody day for you to just finish with the first letter of the Basmala of Bismillah ar-Rahman, let alone the entire chapter. There's a lot to appreciate that many of us will just simply lose and miss out on if we don't examine it in the essence that it was presented. Nothing wrong with reading the English translation, however, but one needs to keep in mind some of the discrepancies that can come about and some of the pitfalls and obstacles here. What are some alternatives, however? The greatest of all alternatives is to begin studying, and it's not impossible, brothers and sisters. Teaching yourself Arabic, not impossible. Difficult, but not impossible. If you spend a good, but the key here is persistency. But if you spend a good 8 months, and I'm only saying this because I've seen it happen, 8 months, you go from 0, not a word, maybe the most you can do is Salamu Alaikum, Bismillah, bye-bye. And you might even think bye was from Arabic at the same time. You go from there, you finish, you have a whole sentence conversation, you can read the Holy Quran. 8 months. It's going to take persistence, however. I have seen it happen before from various brothers and sisters, in fact. 8 months, but for 8 months, constantly working your socks off the rest of your life. Imagine, for 8 months, you study, but you do nothing but study. For 80 years, you will then have and understand Arabic. It's a good trade. It's worth it. Worth the effort. But then, furthermore, you're not studying anything. Number one, you're studying a language. From the secular point of view, that's something wonderful to study. And not what language? A really rich and deep and very prominent language as well, Al-Arabiya. Furthermore, if you are a Muslim, this is quite important to you. Though your holy book was revealed in this language. Of course, now with the understanding as to why it is necessary for it to be brought down in that language. Moving on from that, brothers and sisters, then why does the Holy Prophet of Islam have to be an Arab? Why couldn't he have been this mixed race so we can all relate to him? Because doesn't the Quran say that the Holy Prophet of Islam is an example for all of us? That the Holy Prophet is an uswa hasana? That the Holy Prophet is a role model for all of us. I can't take a role model if he's not from where I'm from. Then you're not going to get far in life. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean much. Because yes, I agree. The greatest prophet, moreover the greatest creation, was an Arab, but amongst the greatest of all tyrants, greatest meaning the worst, were Arabs as well. Abu Lahab was an Arab. Abu Jahl was an Arab. Ibn Muljim was an Arab. Muawiyah was Arabi. The horrible rulers that usurped the rights of Amir al-Mu'mineen, upset Lady Zahra and upset the whole of the Muslim Ummah until today. Arab, Yazid, the man who we are condemning night and day till today, Arab, doesn't matter. Yes, there were good, the bad, the ugly. Why is it a concern that he's an Arab? Because if we're going to use that logic, we'll not get far in life. Might as well, what are you doing living in the West? Might as well take yourself somewhere where people can resonate with you even more. This is a backwards type of thinking. And furthermore, the Holy Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam was Arabi indeed, but one of 5 Arabic prophets. Some ahadith describe that there were roughly 5 Arabic prophets. The majority of Anbiya were not Arab, as some might even assume, because they all looked like they're from and concentrated the Middle Eastern region. Everyone in the Middle East must be Arabi, not necessarily. Armenia is located in the Middle East, but they're not Arabic because people are recognized as a group by their language these days. So if they speak Arabic, then they're Arabi. If they live in the Middle East, they don't speak Arabic, they're not Arabs. Iran live in the Middle East, they don't speak Arabic, not Arabs. Who cares? Why is that such a big deal at this point? Shouldn't be a big deal. The majority of prophets were not Arab. Banu Israel, not Arab. Roughly, as mentioned earlier, a handful of prophets who were Arab. Hud was the first of these Arab. Nabiullah Hud from Yemen. And of course, he began to speak Arabic according to traditions and literature for the first time. According to ahadith, the first in the human timeline, Nabiullah Hud introduced the Arabic language, but not al-lugha al-fusha, al-lugha al-arabiyya al-fasiha, not that. Not the classical pure Arabic that we know today, just the beginning of Arabic. Then you have Salih, who spoke Arabic as well, was from the prophets who were Arabs. Then you had, not to forget, Shu'aib was a prophet as well. And don't forget, you have Nabiullah Ismail being the first prophet, Ishmael, son of Ibrahim alayhi salam, who started the language al-lugha al-arabiyya al-fasiha, al-fusha, the prime, pure, classical Arabic that the Quran is revealed in. Ahadith, according to them, Nabiullah Hud was the first to begin the language. But of course, we have various dialects in Arabic. You might notice that in Iraq, it differs from in Lebanon, that differs from in Egypt, differs from Saudi Arabia, differs from many of these other regions. There are various dialects. And that's likely what was going on in that time. Nabiullah Ismail presented the Fusha that we all understand today. And then the last of these Arabi prophets, the greatest of them all, Sayyidul Arabi wal Ajam, Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Therefore, a majority of our prophets were non-Arab. If that means something, then the majority rule, then of course you find that the majority of the prophets were not Arab. And that doesn't indicate anything necessarily. There were prophets who were from the Asian subcontinent or from the Indian Pakistani subcontinent or from Europe, because there is not a group except that we have sent them a warning according to Holy Quran. Therefore, when I look at these various groups, Allah sent warnings in the form of messengers, in the form of signs, and so on and so forth. Another question arises, why is Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali, called Sayyidul Arab? I, as a lover of Imam Ali alayhi salam, I may not necessarily be Arabi, but I want to be of the followers of Imam Ali from every definition of the meaning. Okay, his title amongst them is Sayyidul Arab. I technically don't fall into that category, but the continuation of that title, Sayyidul Arabi wal Ajam. Al-Ajam, foreigner as well, someone who is a non-Arab basically. Are you not a human being? If you're not Arabi, then you would fall into that category as well. Imam alayhi salam is our Mawla altogether. The Arab, the non-Arab. We are all under the passport of Ali ibn Abi Talib. That's the only nationality you want to take with you when you get into Jannah. When they look at your passport, when you enter the inspection, they want to see where you came from and what your nationality is. When we go to Jannah, inshallah ta'ala, if Allah grants us that blessing, we want to have in our passport not Iraqi, not Khoja, not Lubnani, not Ameriki. We want to have Shi'at Ali ibn Abi Talib. And that's what we want to identify ourselves as. We take pride in being from where we are from. There's nothing wrong with that. Allah Azza wa Jal recognized it in the Holy Quran. إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَى وَجَعَلْنَاكُم شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ. We've made you nations of tribes. At least Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala acknowledged it. Therefore, it's a thing, Allah recognized it. But of course, the best of you, not this or that, the one who is most God conscious. How can you achieve God consciousness without the love and consciousness of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam? And that being said, obviously, goes without being said, the love of Rasulullah, Quran, and every tenet within Islam, Ahlul Bayt. Therefore, one critique, Sayyidul Arabi wal Ajam. Another is the man's main title. Salamullahi alayhi is Amir al-Mu'mineen, the commander of the faithful. A faithful one can be any human being from any part of the globe. So long as you fall into that category, should be fine, inshallah ta'ala. The greatest of companions, brothers and sisters, from the Holy Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, were non-Arab. The most notable of them, Bilal, Habashi, Ethiopia, Africa. Osama bin Zayd, same place. One not even from that region of the world, Salman al-Farisi, from Bilad Faris, from modern day Iran. Later on became from the family, symbolically speaking, Salmanu minna Ahlul Bayt. You even had from the closest of those to the Prophet of Islam, a Jew, Safiya bint Huyay, who then would become Prophet's wife, mother of the believer. Jewish lady, a lady from North Africa, Egypt, let's say, if you would classify that North Africa, not necessarily the Middle East, depending on your discussion here. You would find Mari al-Qubtiyya as well. Various groups. Then you find the latter Imams of Ahlul Bayt starting this tradition of marrying outside of their culture, of their society. And this is a beautiful, beautiful tradition, brothers and sisters. There is no superiority given to this group or that group. It doesn't matter at all, brothers and sisters. When we look at our companions, don't be of the habit where just because, and this is a vital point, everyone should take notice, highlight this. Just because you have friends from a particular group does not mean that you are now justified to address that particular group as if you are from that particular group. What do I mean? Some of us will be as blunt as possible. Just because we see that we have friends from, let's say, for example, the African American community, then we become all of a sudden entitled to speak and address them and talk to them the same way we would speak and address and talk to our family, use probably racial slurs. It's okay, I have friends who come from this group, so I'm not being offensive. It's still an offensive term at the end of the day. You having friends from that particular group, jokingly mocking and addressing them Just because, yeah, you have friends, so you're not necessarily being malicious or vile or having malicious intent, does not justify it, brothers and sisters. Whatever offensive term that is being used, whoever you are addressing, there were times, moments in history where many people will be called various names, and it's very insulting. Whether it's the African community or the Arabic community or the Iranian community, brothers and sisters, or the Afghani community. If there is a term, by de facto, everyone knows that is an insulting term, don't use it. And you cannot say, look, I am not racist because I have friends from that group, so it's okay, I'm just saying it because I just feel like it. That doesn't count, and you will probably, God knows, be held accountable on the Day of Judgment if you've offended somebody. And that doesn't matter if you have friends from that particular group, brothers and sisters. Moving on from this, brothers and sisters, when we examine the companions of the Holy Prophet, you find they're very diverse. You have one being from the Arabian, multiple, almost majority, from the Arabian Peninsula, others from the African continent, some from even Rome, and others from where? From, let's say, modern day Iran. Okay, what about this ayah of the Holy Quran? This ayah in Surah Al-Ma'idah, chapter 3, verse 139. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. And do not be sad, do not grieve, do not feel worry, for you are the superior ones. وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ. You heard of Ali, above. Would you believe it? There is, because there's only one, I've only heard this once before, uproar occurred as a result of this. There is this one contemporary self-proclaimed scholar, although scholar for the longest part until you realize this happened here, who claims that the Quran has some elements of racism in it. A self-proclaimed scholar, alive today, may Allah forgive him, an elder man, and contemporary as well, who believes that yes, the Quran has some elements of racism. That's just how it was. And yeah, this is not something that sinks with me because, Quran is racist in this part. Shaykhna, which part? Dear Shaykh, which part is racist? This ayah, chapter 3, you ask him, he says chapter 3, verse 139, Surah Al-Ma'idah. Read it. Bismillah ar-Rahman wa la tahinu wa la tahzanu wa antum alone. Do not feel sad, do not feel lost, do not grieve, whatever, and you are the higher ones. He's like, does this not have Ali and there's Nasi, that you are above, everyone else is below? That's not right, that's not fair. First of all, this is not referring to a particular race. This is addressing the Muslims. We're all Muslims from one race? No, we just mentioned the multiple from various nations, from various tribes. Doesn't matter. Second of all, if it's referring to just Muslims and Muslims being at the helm of society, continue the ayah. وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. And you are those whom are above if you are mu'mineen and believers. Indeed, as a believer like that of a disbeliever, when Allah asks you to believe, it is for your own good and you will find the benefits in society. Yeah, a believer is not like that of a disbeliever. أَفَمَنْ كَانَ مُؤْمِنًا كَمَنْ كَانَ فَاسِقًا لَا يُسْتَوُونَ. Is the believer like the disbeliever? No, they are not comparable. That's all. We agree with that. By the way, every group that has a certain paradigm, a way of living, believes in the same exact thing. I mean, yeah, we have the advantage here. We've understood intellectually, we've enlightened ourselves enough to see the truth for what it means, for what it is. Yeah, in that manner. But that doesn't mean my life is more worthy. La. My level and scope of understanding is superior, yes. But all of us are on the same playing field. Indeed, if Allah didn't make you, if Allah did not make you, it means He didn't love you. But because Allah made you, means He loves you. And that is an indication that Allah loves you enough to make you and bring you and provide for you and give you an opportunity and chance. Some of us took the opportunity, but we didn't stop with the opportunity. We took more and more and more. And we became followers of Ahlul Bayt at the same time. And we became propagators of their message at the same time. And we became loyal followers of the Imam of our time. Indeed, we don't just stop. We continue and add and add and add. Others stopped halfway, others didn't go, others made it to a certain extent. We believe that it's with regards to the effort you put in life, Allah will elevate your status. That's all there is to it. But with regards to significance of life, whoever kills one, as if they've killed all of humanity. All of humanity. Humanity has Muslim, non-Muslim, kafir and mushrik. So all of us are into that category. So one life is equal to all. And the man who we all love and adore to the highest degree said it best, that people are two, brothers in faith equals in humanity. It doesn't matter at that point. However, with regards to intellectual thought, enlightened thinking, yes, we believe, of course, who are we? A religion that doesn't give you conviction is not a religion worth to be followed. You have to be confident. That's why there's an issue with the term faith that I have. It's not faith. I don't just believe in something with the absence of evidence. I have every reason to believe. And that is why intellectually I might be at an advantage. But that doesn't mean I impose myself as this superior race type of following-esque, Nazi-esque group cult that, hey, we are the best, don't talk to us. That's not how it works. And those are outside of the folds of Islam, this type of thinking. Therefore, one cannot help but look at the companions of the Holy Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam for this example, and how they all became brothers and sisters together. But just as the companions of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam were really diverse, as were the companions of Sayyidus Shuhada salamullahi alayhi, were very diverse. In fact, in most circumstances, more diverse. You find from the companions of the Prophet a young boy, to the old man, to the African, to the Christian, to the adversary, to the loyal follower. And ultimately you find before all of these diverse companions, the first and foremost, the sabiq of the companions of Abu Abdullah, who gave his life and blood for his message, was Muslim ibn Aqil ibn Abi Talib. Whenever we think of the companions of Imam al-Hussein, don't necessarily think of Muslim for some reason, because when you think companions, you think those 72 who fought with Sayyidus Shuhada in Ashura. La, amongst the companions was Muslim ibn Aqil, but he just happened to be martyred before everyone else. And you find that Sayyidus Shuhada salamullahi alayhi dispatches Muslim ibn Aqil in the most beautiful of way possible when he writes to those who have invited him to Kufa, stating, إني قد بعثت لكم أخي وابن عمي وثقتي من أهل بيتي, that I have sent to you my brother. What an honor it is, Allah, for Sayyidus Shuhada to call you my brother. وابن عمي, and my cousin. وثقتي من أهل بيتي, and the most trustworthy from my Ahlul Bayt. What an honor. Muslim is sent, of course, the first companion of Sayyidus Shuhada, the first, through thin and thick, goes and arrives. Before he arrives actually, his two followers with him died on the way. Could have returned back, Muslim ibn Aqil, but didn't, continued. Look at the loyalty. And that's why you understand, وَثِقَتِ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْبَيْتِ now. Continues, makes it to Kufa. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad takes over Kufa before Muslim gets in, and does one of three things. To those who wrote to Sayyidus Shuhada, the over 10,000, 18,000, come and be our leader, bloodbath in the square of Kufa, killed and slaughtered all of them, imprisoned them, or was searching to catch them. So you find of those who were imprisoned, Mukhtar al-Thaqifi, those who were killed, Hani ibn Urwa, and those who have yet to be caught, Habib ibn Mudahir. And these are just some names. Muslim arrives and he sees that the majority have left him and are no longer present, either due to fear, due to imprisonment, due to so on and so forth. Spends the night in some traditions indicate Hani ibn Urwa's home or Mukhtar al-Thaqafi's home. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad makes his way to the house. Muslim ibn Aqil, the plan came to kill him. Muslim was hidden behind the curtain before ibn Ziyad left. The idea was to signal to Muslim to come out and kill him. Muslim didn't come out. They ask him, why didn't you do it? He says, I learned from my master Amir al-Mu'mineen, al-Mu'min la yuqdar, that a believer does not cheat. I don't want anyone to say I killed him when he couldn't defend himself. And you kept that loyalty in that moment, Muslim ibn Aqil. Even in the most pinnacle of these moments, you didn't let go of your principles and morals. How many of us would have just forgot, let the man go and do whatever we want to them? Because they are savages and they are not meant to have power. They're corrupt. However you kill them, just kill them, get rid of them. That's not how it works. Muslim ibn Aqil is of the students of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, being the nephew of Imam Ali. Says a mu'min la yuqdar, that a mu'min is not one who cheats such that they will say in the future, Muslim stabbed him in the back and he couldn't see and defend himself at the same time. Not that way. Muslim did not want to live with this. And so you find the cousin of Imam al-Hussein, before he is able to collect and rally as much as he can, he only has a few loyal servants and followers with him. They are searching and there is a bounty on the head of Muslim ibn Aqil. And he takes the small amount of followers he managed to collect that remained, and he begins to lead the prayer. As Muslim ibn Aqil leads the prayer in the mosque of Kufa, silence hung in the air. As he began to pray, followers started to leave. He finished his Maghrib, more left, and he finished his Isha. All of them went. Silence hung in the air. Muslim turns around and no one was there, thinking of his master Hussein, alone and in despair. Allahu Akbar. He sees that he had many, just a few, a handful at least. Now no one's near me. Before Hussein was gharib in Karbala, Muslim was gharib in Kufa. He begins wandering the streets by himself. For those who've ever felt lonely, think of the loneliness of Muslim ibn Aqil, with no one to come to him and welcome him. He sees the house and he goes to the steps and he starts to request some water from the home. A lady comes and her name is Taw'a, asks him, what is your name? He says, Ana Muslim ibn Aqil ibn Abi Talib. I am Muslim, the son of Aqil, the son of Abu Talib. She replied, shocked, are you the nephew of my Mawla? Are you the nephew of Ali ibn Abi Talib, my leader? He replies, yes, and she brings him to her home. And she says to him, O Muslim, listen, I have a son who might return, and I can't promise he will not report you to Ibn Ziyad, for there is a bounty on your head. Muslim goes to the back of the home and he begins praying and supplicating to Allah. He spends the whole night in salah, and then her son returns to the house and sees Muslim ibn Aqil praying, and he reports to Ibn Ziyad. They bring the men and the soldiers to the house and they storm, calling Muslim to come out. Muslim comes and they start to fight. Muslim, being the student of Ali, no one can take him on individually. And you see that they notice that if they take him on one by one, they will not succeed. Therefore, they bring more and start throwing flames and torches at his direction, until one man strikes Muslim ibn Aqil on his blessed lip, and they drag him to the castle of Ibn Ziyad. They ask him, O Muslim, say your will. Muslim says, I want from you to bring me a pail of water. As Muslim is trying to drink, we all know what happens. The blood falls into it and he is not able to drink. It's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees that I want you to die, like how your beloved cousin will die soon. Muslim understands this ayah and this symbol, and so they take Muslim ibn Aqil to the roof of the palace and he requests to pray. He begins to pray his final salah. He finishes his prayer and they ask him, why did you pray very briefly? We would think you are praying and you would prolong your prayer. He says, I am excited to return back to my Lord, and I don't want to give you the impression that I am afraid for myself, but I am afraid for Abi Abdullah. Oh Hussein, don't come to Kufa. And then they slaughter Muslim ibn Aqil as he shouts out, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah, peace be upon you, oh Hussein. And they throw Muslim ibn Aqil, Allahu Akbar, from the palace top. And Imam Hussein approaches the daughter of Muslim in that moment, knowing what had just happened, and he begins to pat the blessed head of Muslim's daughter Hamida. She inquires, have I become an orphan? He says, why do you say so? She says, because Rasulullah would say, when a child becomes orphan, pat their head. Abu Abdullah says, oh my beloved Hamida, you are now my daughter, and my daughter Sukayna and Ruqayya are now your sisters. We look at Hamida and say, how blessed are you, for when Sukayna was there to help you, she became your sister, and so did Ruqayya, and so did Hussein, he became your father. But who became the father of Sukayna when Hussein left? Who was there to become a sister for Ruqayya when all had left? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. فرج عنا يا Allah. Oh Allah, we ask you to alleviate this pandemic from the Muslims and non-Muslims alike, to help those who are in need, to grant the hajat and the wishes and desires of all those who plead to you on a night like this, Ya Rabbal Alameen. And we ask you, Ya Allah, on behalf of Muslim ibn Aqil, to grant us the ziyarah of Abi Abdullah in this dunya and the shafa'ah of Abi Abdullah in the akhirah. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والعلماء والشهداء سيما من أوصانا بالدعاء رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة. May Allah bless all those, the originators of the majlis, the very few in attendance, and those who are watching online. And may Allah grant us the intercession and ziyarah of the saints of Al Muhammad, the Holy Prophet of Islam, with a very loud salawat, with a Suratul Mubarakat al-Fatiha, but before it, your loudest of salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala